be seven and a half minutes of our time. It's well worth the thing. Some of y'all have done this. If not, then this is going to be really good practice. And so we're just going to cruise on over to the QuickTime player, share the screen, and here we go. All right. Play along and listen. It's good. This is the study. Break. Goes high to the 35 in D, 35 in G. Dun, 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 hey. Okay, that's one round at 65. We're going to bump it up to 75, and we're going to go again with the demo. Here it comes. So here's the kickoff to go. Second fret of the E. Sweetheart, I thought up on the arpeggio. Now you left me all alone. I have no one to call. Now, sweetheart, you done me wrong. Up to 35 in D, 35 in G. All right, so now we're going to go up to the album tempo. It's about 85. Stop it right there, and we're going to teach it a little bit. Okay, we're going to stop it right there. Hold on. Okay, so let's just look at the major elements going on here. The first.
Well, before you get started, I've always known you were a square, but sometimes in that last video you were a square, and sometimes you were a rectangle.
I got to get some curves in the picture somehow. Maybe in my next life. So the kickoff. You know, it kicks off right to the A, but it has the pickup notes. And I just want to draw your attention to the tremolo because and the way I talk about it, it's a 30-second note tremolo. So if your beats are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and your 16th notes would be 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So your 30-second notes are going to be digga 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 digga. Okay, so let's just all get that. This the 30-second note tremolo. It's going to sound like this. Everybody do that. We'll go down the scale right here, down. Okay, so it's starting off on the 5th fret of the A. Dun, 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 dun. These are all downstrokes. Down, 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 down. Then you're into the bottom of the A chord, ring finger on the 7th fret of the D, 4th fret of the A with your first finger, and you're into this 30-second note tremolo. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. Da 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 da. Boom, bo, do, do, bo, 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 bo. So you got a big bunch of tremolo. 1, 2, 3. Okay. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Da 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 da. Bum, 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 bum. You told me that your love was true. Let's check that out right there. Start on the 2nd fret of the E. Oh, these are 30-second notes, but I might call them like they're 16th notes just so I can articulate it. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a something like that. So you're starting on the 2nd fret of the E, back down to the 5th fret of the A, 2nd fret of the E again, then your little finger on the 7th fret of the E, 5th fret. So you're starting off with the tremolo, then the way down, something like that. And it's that digga 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 digga. So that's the kind of idea, that's the rhythm, it's the ethos that kind of is similar to the schottish thing. Okay? All right, so we're thinking about that. And then the next big lick is going to be like this. Okay, so the first time he's just sliding from 3 to 4. These are all downstrokes. Slide from 3 to 4, up to the 5th fret of the D. Then you're going to individually articulate 3 and 4, 5th fret of the D again, then that same thing again, but before an open G. So we got the slide from 3 to 4, 5th fret of the D, articulate 3 to 4. Ah, the maestro is here.
Hey.
Howdy, Peter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I've been watching and enjoying everything you've been doing there. I just couldn't resist anymore.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I have to set up my little video studio here. I'm going to prop this up with Patrick O'Brien book, The 13-Gun Salute.
Excellent.
And then prop the bottom up with Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. A little light reading.
Yeah. Like your bear shirt, too. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a super big treat.
Yeah, I like this shirt. This kind of all this nature critters in the bear.
Oh, wow. Super cool.
Bringing in the language, like you're calling it earth tones and everything like that. I think that's really great. That's really important. If I don't want to interrupt, but
no, please.
But the thing about Bill Monroe, he used to say, "I've never missed a sunset." He said, "I've always made a point of seeing every sunset and every sunrise." I mean, that was his. Wow. That was. I mean, he said that's what he was. For him, that was something important to even mention.
Yeah, and inspiring.
And just thinking more about these whole earth tone, poet of the land kind of thing that I always found in his music was, like First Whippoorwill, or even Blue Moon of Kentucky is just an absolute nature poem. I mean, it's full of, love and passion and everything.
Yeah, wow.
But I thought that was interesting. You would mention those because, yeah, the earth tones is a big part of what makes bluegrass. I think. Hey, we may end up being, along with, people like Taj Mahal in the blues, and a few of the blues players that play acoustically anymore, we may be the last actual hands-on music.
I feel you there, and what comes out of Nashville. I got a friend Guthrie Trapp. He just calls it Southern pop these days. The connection to the land. They might sing about going down to the river, but and it's maybe in some instances, you can feel that. But in the earlier music, it was really more about the people in the land and farmers
Well,
and all this.
yeah, I asked Bill one time. He was a stickler about haircuts and I mean, we were just about to go all woolly on him, and he didn't want that to happen. but I asked him one time. I said, where did this? I mean, you have to. He let me ask him questions, and remember James used to say, don't be bothering my daddy with these questions, but I was real careful to. I mean, we were working shoulder to shoulder. And it's hard not to feel close to somebody when you're like that, even if they are Bill Monroe, I mean, literally, we'd be singing, you'd feel his weight pushing on you, I mean, he'd lean on you, and you had to lean back. And it sort of became a point of humor at times. But what I was going to say was, I asked him about the white shirt thing, because he used to talk about when he joined the Opry, everybody's wearing checkered shirts. Flannels.
Yeah.
He said Acuff and them were all wearing checkered shirts. He said, when I joined the Opry, I was the only man to wear a white shirt.
Wow. And
he talked about it so much, and I never asked him anything about it. I was just like, yeah, wow, and I said, finally, I asked him one day, what was it about the white shirt that was important? I mean, where did that come from? And he was generous enough to talk about his own personal view of things. And he told me that the white shirt was important because he said his early audience were farmers, and they might only have one white shirt. And they might only wear it on a day like a Sunday. But he noticed when they showed up for his shows, they all dressed in their white shirts.
Wow.
And he said that I wouldn't, he said I wouldn't ever dress down to anybody who was showing me that respect. So they, the white shirt became important. But, his costuming was very interesting because initially he was kind of like plantation boss costume. Those riding pants.
Right. The job.
Not everybody got a horse. Only the boss got the horse. And they would wear these riding pants, these jodhpurs.
Very striking.
Oh, yeah. But also very much like a certain strange leader in Germany. He also wore high boots and riding pants.
I never thought of that.
Well, I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. But I think that, in working on some cowboy music and stuff over the years with Don Edwards, one of the big themes was from plowboy to cowboy. If you're a plowboy, you might not even have shoes, and you're walking behind a horse, and you're seeing that horse in front of you all day long, and you're seeing business going down, and I mean, it's when Monroe plowed behind a mule, and he talked about it. He said that's where he said a lot of my tone comes from.
Oh, wow.
From plowing behind a mule.
Wow.
Now, I don't know about the time of it all, but he said I would be out there plowing behind a mule, wondering where my brothers was. And they had gone off to World War I, but they had to have been back, because his memory of them on the road from Rosine, from the train depot, singing "By and by, when the morning comes, we'll understand it better by and by." In the early morning, he said he heard that. He heard his brothers singing, walking home from, that'd be Speed Monroe and the rest of them. And I just thought such a striking image for a young kid. He said he was only 4 or 5 years old,
Wow.
but aware that he had this big family. He had many brothers, and then of course the brothers are out doing stuff. And then Bill's left to do the main chore, which is plow. And I guess he probably learned that at least 7 years old. But I understand his parents were gone by the time he was 8. Is that correct? That's
Yeah,
when he went to work with with Uncle Penn, and probably Uncle Penn too.
really early to not have your folks so lonesome.
Uncle Penn was the guy who hooked him up with the, with the mule and everything. You
Uh-oh. Might be freezing a little bit there. Sorry, neighbors. Uh-oh. I hope we didn't lose him. No. Peter, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
Frozen.
there it goes. Yeah, well, not stated. Sorry. Uh-oh. There we go. It came back.
Anyway, I ramble on, but
We love it.
I wanted to tell you something interesting. Back when you, at the beginning of this conversation, when you said about Monroe as a stickler for the image and the haircut and looking real good on stage, it's funny because after you left the Bluegrass Boys, he started relaxing on that into the late 60s, early 70s, as you know. And I was always questioning him about his long hair that he had in the 80s and the 90s. And I said, when did you decide to let your hair grow long? And he said, one of the things he said, among other people, he said, Peter Rowan made me realize it's okay to have long hair.
that is funny. Here's a funny anecdote. Somebody asked him why he wore his hair long in the back, and Bill's answer was beyond classic. He said, to cover my knowledge knot.
That would be a typical thing that kind of thing he would say. Also, it reminded me of the fact that when he was a teenager, he grew his hair long.
Oh, right.
Have you seen the picture of in the Charlie Monroe Bear collection?
Yes, I have seen that.
Bill is laying halfway on his side. They got a bunch of girls. Charlie's holding 2 of them, and Bill's just looking like the Sly Fox, and his hair is shoulder length.
Right.
He shoulder length. So he knew. I mean, he had already done it.
In the early 70s, I had hair down below my nipples and a long, hair, like this Axl Rose hair, long, thin hair. And Monroe said, if ever you join the Bluegrass Boys, you're going to have to get that all cut off. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I ever joined the Bluegrass Boys, I would be willing to do that for sure. And but then he'd put his arm around me and say, when I was your age, I had long hair too. It's okay.
Oh.
I think, as City Billy children of the 60s with strong love. I mean, we came from so far away to the bluegrass, you know what I mean? And we didn't grow up with it I grew up square dancing and not even know what it just was music. But, our longing for bluegrass was so strong because it was a big ocean of culture to cross. And it was not for the faint of heart. The South at that time was still segregated. And there just were embedded attitudes and things like that. But I would say among the musicians, there was mostly a sense of humor about things. That I didn't get any hard-nosed racism. I don't know where that abided. I think most people just figured that they had been that way for so long. I remember when I was in Nashville, the first demonstration happened. The Students for Democratic Society, and a friend of mine who I knew back when I was back there in the 80s, he's still there. I went down, to their office, the Students for Democratic Society, and they organized the first. Well, I don't know what it was, but it was pretty lonesome. I was there, and it was just people milling about and feeling self-conscious and kind of weird. But what I found that the segregated South, from the side of the black side, you might say, was immense compassion of that generation that had survived from Civil War up until the 60s. I've never met kinder people in my life. I mean, they had solved the problem of that horrible, everything, the class distinction, the color distinction. They have solved it in the most beautiful way because the outpouring of love from them was wonderful. And of course, let's not forget that Bill Monroe had a black harmonica player in his band, D. Ford Bailey. He was the only guy in country music to ever work with black musicians. And not only that, he gave Ray Charles a spot on his show. And Ray Charles opened Bill Monroe's show and I asked I met a guy in Texas who was a roadie back then. He was 14 years old and he worked with Bill. And he said that they carried the piano in the trailer, and they carried Bill's horse.
Whoa.
King Wilkie in a trailer. And at that point, Bill would ride out on the stage at night on his horse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, see, he doesn't document his life, like take a picture of me. Like he was just way in it, like he was a showman of Bill Keith used to tell me, he said one of the stories that Bill would say, on their way out of town, they'd drive by a bank and they'd see some little kid standing there, and he'd say, he'd flip him a $50 and say, "Here, boy, you go on in that bank there and get Mr. Monroe a sack of money." And he'd go, "Mr. Monroe's outside in his bus and he wants a sack of money." And the kid would bring him the money. I mean, things were different. Let's face it. Anyway, I go on.
Can you tell that story about the Bluegrass Boys in Las Vegas?
Charles, it was I can't remember everybody's name. But it was the band. It was the longest band he had. They transitioned from driving the bus themselves to having a bus driver. I know that was Tom. I think Tom Ewings might have been in the band, or the other guitarist.
Is that Wayne Lewis?
And Wayne, yeah, and the banjo player in that group for the longest time.
Robbins or Blake?
No.
Blake Williams?
Yes, Blake Williams is the one who told me the story about the Las Vegas thing with Ray Charles. Is this knowledge of people now?
I think it'd be a great story to tell. I love this one.
Well, I mean, I can't tell it like he can, but the boys were driving back from California, and Bill was sitting in the front seat playing solitaire in the bus, and he had a driver. And I think the fiddle player at the time, he said he was standing down in the well by the door, and they were going through Las Vegas, and there was a sign that said Ray Charles appearing at Caesars or something like that. And they said, "Well, look at that. Ray Charles is playing the Caesars." And Bill's sitting there, and he draws a card, licks his finger, draws a card, and just lays down and goes, "I'd like to see old Ray." Now, Bill would never have said anything if they just kept going on and kept driving through the night. But the guys had been with him long enough to know that when Bill Monroe says, "I'd like to see old Ray," pay attention.
Seize the opportunity.
Because what did that mean? It was like, yeah, me too. I'd like to see old Ray, but so they said, "You really want to see Ray?" And Bill said, "Yeah, I'd love to," and they went and they got tickets, and all the Bluegrass Boys had a front row table, and they had their hats. And the whole cowboy hat thing, anybody who's lived in Texas knows this too. The hat thing is such a fetish. When you go to a restaurant or any place where you're going to take your hat off, you stack your hats upside down so that the crown of your hat's in the crown of and you stack them on the floor, or you put them on a chair, a bunch of hats all stacked into each other, upside down. You never put it the brim side down. And they're sitting there watching the show, and they're clapping and this and that. Of course, Ray doesn't know Bill Monroe's there. and Bill's they're just so happy, you know, and they just the Bluegrass Boys. The only story they knew is that Bill liked to hear Ray Charles, and it was great. Well, after the show, they'd bring Bill backstage to say hi to Ray, to meet Ray, they think. And Bill doesn't let on, you know, and him and the Bluegrass Boys are walking around in the backstage. Probably is one of those long curved backstages with a bunch of dressing rooms off of the, you know, and they're rounding the corner. Bill and the Bluegrass Boys, all suited up in their hats and everything. And around the other corner from the other side of the stage comes Ray Charles with his whatever, his handlers. And Bill Monroe stops and he pulls off his hat. And he stands there, you know, with his homage pose, you know. And he goes, "Blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining." And Ray Charles bursts loose of his handlers and goes, "Bill!" and comes running up to Bill Monroe and grabs him in a bear hug and says, "I will never forget that voice," he said. That's the quote that Blake said. "I will never forget that." And imagine the jaw-dropping experience for the Bluegrass Boys to be standing in this reuniting of a young blind piano player had opened for Bill years and years ago. And Bill was open and supported folks like that. You know, he loved Elvis. Well, even before Elvis did Blue Moon of Kentucky, he was a big supporter of Elvis. So, I mean, that's the story that I had heard.
I'm glad to hear you say this. I had not heard the story, but it seems like I spend my life trying to tell people how Monroe embraced all these other kinds of music, and he liked musical pioneers of rock and roll and jazz and swing. He was even a big Lawrence Welk fan in the 1940s and 30s. And people don't believe me. They say, "Oh no, he's..."
Yeah, I think we might be freezing up there.
That's his own music. It's completely crazy. You know, he loved Jimi Hendrix.
Really?
He thought Jimi Hendrix.
Well, I wonder where he got the idea of three fiddles. Do you think he got the idea of three fiddles from Bob Wills?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Probably so. But he loved all kinds of things. He told me that when he was working in Chicago area, I guess East Chicago, Indiana, Northwest Indiana, that they went out to hear Lawrence Welk, and he was the rage then. And the accordion was the rage. And so he said that he thought it was a fantastic idea to get the accordion into his group, because people didn't even need to know what the music was. If they advertised that there was or showed a picture of an accordion player, then people would just come to the show regardless of what it was.
Wow, very interesting.
Well, I missed that. What was that about North Indiana?
What I say, yeah, you froze there for a second. Monroe told me that he thought it was a great idea to have an accordion in his group at this time when the accordion was the most popular thing because of what Lawrence Welk had done to it. Lawrence Welk became the most popular person on the radio during this period, and everybody would go see any group that had an accordion in it, no matter what the genre or style.
Well, I'd like to just say, I would like to just mention about the triplet, the 3/4 time within a 4/4 context, but I'd like to just say one more thing about that mandolin style. In 1950 in Honolulu, there was a Hawaiian man, Portuguese Hawaiian man named John K. Almeida. And now this stuff's you can find this stuff now. You can dial it up. If you dial up John K. Almeida, you'll hear the actual melody.
Sending love to the connection. Sending love through the digital wires. Peter, are you frozen right now here a second? There it goes. It's going. Oh, it's frozen.
Even when Peter Rowan is frozen, he's still the coolest guy on the planet.
You got a good point. I remember one time Jim Lauderdale and Ronnie McCrew were hanging out in the hallway at IBMA, and Jim's putting on a show and everything, and Ronnie puts his hand on his shoulder. He says, "Jim, you are the coolest guy in the hallway until Peter gets here." Oh gosh, I hate that that it's frozen now, but I just want to take a minute to say that it's what we're getting to is a heavy conversation on race, and like Monroe was a big healer in a way for our country and the world, bringing this music together, and so I think we're kind of touching on it in different ways. All good, Peter. Thanks for coming back. It's
Well, I missed the Jim Lauderdale story.
Oh, I was saying that Ronnie hanging out at Ivy May in the hallway one time, and Jim was putting up, just having fun and drinking wine and having all that kind of stuff, and making everybody laugh. And Ronnie McCreary puts his hand on his shoulder. He says, "Jim, you were the coolest guy here until Peter gets here."
Hey, bluegrass folks, I mean, it's a special world. It's blue, feeling so blue. I wish I had someone I knew just to help me tuck away